Yeah, there it is.
Amazing. Okay. So, a guide for navigating the return to school. And I want to start by giving you a quick snapshot of our agenda, and then I will tell you a bit about me and we will really dig in. We're going to start with my introduction and some goal setting work. Then we're going to talk about how we start SMART in the summer. We're going to talk about school prep at home, how to partner SMART with your child, what it really means to communicate with the school over the summer. We're going to break down a case study, and then there will be plenty of time for you to ask all of those questions. So you can either hold on to them on your own or put them in the chat, and we will get to them as we move through. So, as I said, I am Melanie Bieber. I am the founder of Level Up Counseling and Consulting. And I started my counseling journey at Harvard, where I got a degree in human development and psychology, and then went on to Penn to get my license in counseling, as well as my certification to work in schools. Then for 12 years, I worked in schools with kids ages pre-K through 8th grade. And a few years ago, when I was working in a school, the PE teacher came to me and said, "I wish I had you when I was a kid." And he is half a generation older than I am, and an adult who now understands that the difficulties that he had in school were because he has ADHD. And he recognizes that there wasn't somebody at school who understood him, who helped him, who structured things just differently enough to help him really thrive in school. And yet here he is, an educator who came back to a setting where he struggled because he has this passion for helping other people thrive. But he realized, wow, his school life could have been different had he had someone like me when he was younger. And in those follow-up conversations about what that really means, he decided that we were going to write a book. He just kind of kept coming back to me and saying, "We're going to write a book about ADHD." And I said, "Okay, Ralph, anything you say, I'm really busy. I will yes you to death right now just to get you out of my office." And that's exactly what happened, because a few years later, now we've written a book, a children's book, a guide, a way to really communicate and understand and allow children to see themselves as protagonists in a children's book and to invite conversation. And my hope in this book is that by highlighting the wonderful ways that a child that has an ADHD diagnosis can think and contribute, this message reaches children just like Aaron, the protagonist, so they can see themselves in a positive light. And equally as important is my hope that those who may judge children with ADHD pause to reconsider their views the next time they meet someone like Aaron. Beyond the story itself, the book provides easily accessible guides for kids and adults to help address concerns and support children early in their developmental arcs. So that's sort of my love for supporting children with ADHD came through working in schools in lots of different school settings. And currently I run my private practice, and somewhere along the way of helping kids day in and day out, I realized how much I loved helping the adults who were caring for those children. And that's how the practice came to be. So enough about me. Now let's focus on all of you. I'd like to start by really thinking about two questions. The first one is, what's your why? Why did you show up here today? And if you have that pen and paper, take a second and write it down. You don't have to share it. You can, but you don't have to. But write it down for yourself. And the second thing I want you to think about is, do you have a specific summer goal for your child that's going to help them when they return to school in the fall? If you have a specific goal, jot it down. Also, if you have a specific goal, do you have a plan? Do you know what steps you're going to take to make that goal a reality? And if you don't have a goal yet, right? Yet's the key word here. My goal for you is that you will leave this conversation tonight having 1 to 2 specific, tangible goals to focus on when we leave here. And later in our conversation, I'm going to ask for a volunteer or two from the group. This will be a great opportunity to talk about specific goals, either help creating a goal or help setting a plan to achieve that goal, figuring out what steps you can take to help your child achieve this goal. And I hope some of you will be open to sharing and participating when we get there. So, school success starts in the summer. And for everybody who's here right now, I think you understand that because it is July 10th. And the last thing you want to be thinking about is school. And yet, here you are. And to everybody who watches this later, whatever time you show up to start thinking about school is great. The sooner the better, but we meet you where we are, and we go from there. The first thing that we really need to do to successfully start working on next year's school year is reflect. You have finished the 22-23 school year. You've had a small break from it. And now it's time to begin thinking about the 23-24 school year. The first step should be to reflect. When we take time to reflect, we want to focus on positives and negatives. Any given year, month, week, day can feel like a roller coaster. So it's important to create a balanced vision of what went well and what you may want to target for improvement. Reflecting is going to be most meaningful if you do it with your child. And this is a theme that I'm going to come back to over and over again today. The more you do this work with your child, the more successful you're going to be. And an easy way to visualize the reflection is to create a chart like this. Super, super simple chart, just a basic T-chart, success on one side, struggle on the other side. And you throw in what you think of as it comes to you. And the great thing about this is there are not right or wrong answers. After you have some bullets on each side, engage in conversation around whether there's a specific item on the struggle list that you want to focus on this year. Also, talk about what steps you took last year to achieve the success in the success column, right? It didn't just happen. You did something. Your child did something to make it happen. The more we understand what we did that worked, the more we're setting ourselves up for further success in the future. Also, some of those steps may not need attention for the start of the school year, but others that you succeeded in or that your child succeeded in last year may need action again for continued success. An example of that might be if you wrote that your child made a great friendship, right? Are you having play dates with that child over the summer to maintain the relationship? Maybe your child isn't going to be with that child in class again next year. So do we need to focus on a special effort on creating another healthy friendship at the start of this school year? Maybe we need to be practicing what it looks like to initiate a conversation. Other successes, like mastering reading, only required that continued practice to keep them in the success column. So really being thoughtful about both as we go. The next thing that I want to talk about is sleep. We know that sleep is important during the school year, but it's often something that we let slide during the summer. I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure your child is getting enough sleep during the summer. If sleep is a challenge for your child, now is the time to address it directly. Here's why. We know that no one functions well when they are short on sleep. But for children with ADHD, this is amplified. Research shows that sleep deprivation most negatively impacts a person's executive functioning. And as we know, a particular struggle for most people with ADHD is executive functioning. So this is enough of a reason to focus on sleep. Additionally, having a consistent bedtime helps to set and maintain routines. So sleep not only impacts executive function, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, but it also impacts general set of routine. And routines really help children thrive. Summer tends to be a more fluid time where day-to-day looks a little bit less predictable, right? The more consistent of a routine we can set and help our children set, especially for our older children, the more smoothly their days will go now, but the easier the shift to school will be also. There are certain aspects of the day that you can specifically try to keep aligned with the school routine, no matter what your children are doing in terms of activities during the summer. Wake up time, mealtime, and as we already discussed, bedtime. If we can keep those really systematic throughout the summer, we are setting our child up for better success during the return to school. The one caveat to that is, in terms of keeping routines the same, is if your child's school starts really early, or they go to before care and they're having to wake up in the late 5s or in the 6s, letting your child sleep in a bit, somewhere between the 7s and the 8s, may be more beneficial, because then they're more likely getting the recommended number of hours that they need. And so that's one caveat to sticking really closely to the routine. In terms of executive function practice, another great thing to do during the summer is practice a specific executive function. This can be something when we go back to that chart that we discussed earlier, and we see if there's an area of growth that's really specific to an executive function, and maybe even one thing within an executive function, right? The smaller we set our goals, the more likely we are to achieve them. And once we feel success achieving a goal, our children and us are more likely to put in the time and the effort to keep working at new goals, to set and to achieve, to set and to achieve. Think of it as that snowball effect, right? When it's wintertime and you're outside and you start with this tiny little compact bowl and you start rolling it, the more you roll it, the bigger it gets, the more success you feel. It's the same idea with practicing something that is difficult, that doesn't necessarily come naturally. So when we find and pick an executive function that we want to practice, we also want to figure out, how do we measure our growth? No one expects perfection, but being able to track growth of a certain skill over time can be really rewarding for both of you. You can track growth qualitatively or quantitatively. You can keep a really quick log. You can track it on your phone. You can just have a conversation about it if it feels like writing it down feels overwhelming or like it would be a barrier to getting started, right? We don't want to create barriers, but we do want to be able to celebrate when there is success. So we can track growth by keeping a log or talking, and we can think about what happens to my body when I make a certain choice, or how do my friends respond when I say something or I don't say something, or I touch them, or I keep my hands to myself, right? And all of this depends on what the specific goal is that your child is working on. We can also track quantitatively with data like how many times you completed a task or how long a task took. All of this information can guide our ability to continue to strengthen any specific executive function. And this applies to so many different executive functioning skills, but even just the act of tracking is in and of itself self-monitoring practice, which is a key executive function. And to share a resource with you that I really love, the Center for the Developing Child at Harvard has a great guide that I sometimes reference when I'm looking for different ways to encourage the development of different executive functioning skills. And the reason that I love it is because so much of what they offer is play-based, game-based. It's activities that children would want to engage in independently and things that feel fun. They don't have that schooly tone to them, so it's easier to get them to engage over the summer. And there's some relatively new research that came out that talks about when we teach children through play, they learn at, I don't remember the exact percentage, but some incredibly faster rate than when it is just written or spoken. And so basically it's fun and they learn a skill faster. Feels like a really good combination to me. Another indirect way to support executive functions is to teach some stress-reducing mindfulness activities. Mindfulness is the idea of being aware of where you are in the moment at any given time, being really, really present. And This ties directly into accessing your inner pharmacy to help understand and control the chemical balance in your brain. When we're stressed, our prefrontal cortex stops working. I've now mentioned prefrontal cortex a couple of times, I think, right? This part of the brain that controls our executive functioning doesn't work well when we don't sleep, doesn't work well when we are stressed. Because our prefrontal cortex also controls our executive functioning, the better we are at keeping stress low, the more your child will be able to access the executive functions that they have already developed. So it's something that we just want to keep in mind, because the more we understand how to manage our stress, be present, and engage in the moment, the more our executive functionings are going to work in our favor. I'm actually going to hold off on tweaking supports. I'm going to talk to you more about that in a bit. And I just want to talk to you a bit about observing. In the summer, observe what works. If you notice your child functioning more independently, more happily, do some critical observation and write it down, record a little bit of data. Obviously, the summer and the school year are really, really different, but that doesn't mean that we can't use some things that work and apply them to a different approach to the school year. For example, if in the summer your child wakes up and plays outside to start their day, and when they come in, they're more able to regulate or they're more able to focus, let's brainstorm ways to recreate this on school mornings. Get them the movement that they seek that then allows them to better control their systems. Ooh. So now we're going to talk a little bit about some really concrete things that we can do at home to prepare for late August, early September. The first is school supplies. Buy your school supplies now. A lot of schools provide lists at the end of the year for the following year. Buy the supplies, buy the backpacks, the lunch boxes ahead of time. Here's why. There is practice to be done. And if we have the actual items that we're going to need for the school year, then we're practicing as authentically as possible. So it's an easy thing to do when there are a few minutes of downtime. You don't have to worry about things selling out. Also, sometimes these things are on sale in the summer, so it saves a few bucks as well. Same thing for clothing. If your child's school requires uniforms or a dress code, purchase the clothes ahead of time so that you can test them out. Make sure they're comfortable, that they won't cause additional delay in the morning routine, maybe that they have pockets so that if there's a small fidget that your child tends to carry with them, they have an easily accessible place to keep it on their body at all times. Another thing that you can do over the summer to prep and to continue doing all year long, never, ever, ever, ever stop, is read inclusive stories. Read all types of stories. The more inclusive, the better. Read stories about children who look the same and different from your family, and read books that normalize thinking, learning, and moving differently. Normalize neurodivergence. When children see themselves in literature, their perspective changes and their self-esteem thrives. My book, Aaron Daniel Henry Davis, Just Another Day at School, is just one example of hundreds of great books on the market who aim to normalize neurodiversity, teach children to embrace and understand different perspectives, and ignite curiosity. Read to them, read with them. For your older children, read side by side. Read the same book at times when you each have time to read, and then talk about it at dinner or in the car on the way to an activity. It doesn't have to be sitting down at bedtime if that's not what works in your schedule, but read, read, read. And finally, in terms of school prep at home, practice. Think about the goal you and your child set and find a way to practice it. Practice the morning routine, packing or unpacking the backpack, taking homework out and sitting down to complete it. Practice any aspect of the school routine that has caused or that is likely to cause difficulty. By ironing out a plan and building muscle memory in the summer months, you're setting everyone up for success come the first day of school. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to partner with your child. Collaborate. It is such an amazing concept, word, and idea. And nobody talks more and has done more research about it than Dr. Ross Green, who says children do well if they can, right? He fully acknowledges and understands that everybody is different. We all have different lagging skills, and that the more we understand ourselves and the more we understand our children, the better we are at helping them. His research on a method of collaboration as the most productive way forward is clear. And the more you work with your child and engage them in conversation of their own progress, their interests, and their areas for growth, and plan for school success, the more successful they're likely to be. When we as parents constantly tell our kids what to do, they tune us out. When we stop telling our children what to do and we let them do whatever they want, chaos tends to ensue. When we collaborate, we work together, we encourage different ideas, and we listen to each other, that is when the path forward is easiest and clearest. The balance of working together can be difficult, but it tends to produce the best results. And summer is a particularly great time to have these conversations because a lot of these stressors that are specific to the school year disappear during the summer. It takes the stress away and allows for proactive conversations, right? Instead of trying to have this conversation in the heat of the moment when everybody is frustrated, if we talk about something that we pretty much know is going to continue to be a problem come the school year unless we address it, everybody can come to the conversation calmly because we're not in the throes of a disaster. When we engage our children in problem-solving conversations, we work to teach them a critical life skill, and we help them take ownership of their own experience. Another really, really important thing for us to do with our children is to educate them. Summer is a great time to continue to broaden your child's understanding of ADHD. It's important that we provide developmentally appropriate explanations of ADHD to our children. Share videos, books, all the videos, all the books that can help them better understand their own brains, strengths, and areas of weakness. The more we educate our children, the more power they have to own their growth and to understand and love who they are. Ideally, these conversations are ongoing over time, but summer can be a great time to get the conversation started. This idea also ties directly back to earlier when I discussed the importance of sharing literature with our children, engaging them in meaningful conversation about who they are as a learner and a person. Books often serve as the best tool to start the conversation. If you're not sure how to bring it up, read a book and ask them what they're wondering about. Ask them what they learned. Ask them what they want to know more about. We don't always have to have the answers. We just have to create the space to allow the conversation. And that leads right to asking questions. Find out how your child is feeling about the return to school, about their ADHD diagnosis, about their interactions with their friends. Just ask questions, but specifically about school. Are they excited? Are they nervous or anxious? How does their anxiety typically display? What tends to help reduce their anxiety? If we know these things ahead of time, it's easier to plan for them. Make a plan for how to address any school-based anxieties before the school year begins. Sometimes one of the best things we can do to reduce anxiety is just to acknowledge it and then practice specific skills, which will reduce the likelihood of that concern happening. Another thing I want you to partner with your children on this summer is continuing external supports. And so either continuing or tweaking. Does your child receive any other external supports during the year? OT, PT, speech, therapy, medication? If so, summer is the time to evaluate how well they've been working. If goals need to be reassessed, and if there might be an opportunity for additional focus on completing a specific task. If you're unhappy with a provider or need to change medications, summer usually offers more flexibility in schedule to make those appointments. A lot of people stop these services during the summer so their child can have a break. But the potential benefit of continuing these services during the summer is really significant. Because the summer is less busy and there are typically fewer asks being made of children, this can serve as a time to really strengthen skills and master them. When we take the work and stress out of one set of skills, it frees brain space to focus on more challenging tasks. For example, if your child sees a specialist to continue to develop self-control, continued practice over the summer will help set them up for success at school. Otherwise, we're looking at a child who has an existing deficit who will likely have lost some of the skills they had mastered last year as part of the general summer slide. Instead, we can use these months as an opportunity to work to close the gap in specific skill deficits. And to this point, a lot of parents ask me if this holds true for medication too. The truth is, I recommend parents approach that on a case-by-case, summer-by-summer question to be discussed with your child and your child's doctor. Many families have found that the same T-chart that we looked at earlier can be a really helpful tool in preparing thoughts for a conversation with the doctor. By doing this, you have a clear visual of what the potential benefits and drawbacks may be. So now we've talked about what we do at home and how we work with our child, but what do we do with school? It's summer. School doesn't care about us. Why are we talking about them? Yes, they do. They may not respond to you right now, but there are people checking email. And there are people come August who are diving in to do everything in their power to make sure that the school year starts smoothly. So, one of the most important things that you can do is open the lines of communication early and keep them flowing. If it's your child's first year at a new school or their first year with a formal diagnosis, you should absolutely reach out to the head of the student support team in early August. At that time, I recommend requesting a meeting with as many members of your child's team as possible before the start of the school year. The goal with this is to let the school know that you are involved, informed, and invested. A particularly important thing to do during this initial school year meeting or over email is to share whatever documentation you may have. For many of you, your child's school may have conducted all testing that would have resulted in documentation, and you may have nothing new to share with them, and that's absolutely fine. But for those of you who engaged in an outside evaluation or have an updated report from your OT or a medical professional, this information can directly inform supports put in place on day one to ensure success. So share documentation. Another thing to consider is involving your previous year teacher as much as possible, specifically if you had a positive working relationship with them. That teacher may have put things in place that worked that you're not aware of or that aren't documented anywhere. Reach out and ask that teacher to carve out a few minutes to set up your child's next year's teacher for success. Most schools already do this, but if you make the personal request, the teacher may spend a few extra minutes making sure they've shared all the magic. We want all the magic we can get, right? And I will be really, really honest with you. Many times throughout my career when I worked in schools, a student would come in and we'd have no paperwork, no diagnosis, no information about this child. And within the first week or month, we might recognize that the child would benefit from additional supports. And I'd call home to connect with the parent. And then suddenly they're mentioning that actually the child has an evaluation and they have a diagnosis and we have lots of paperwork. Please do not be that parent. Don't be that parent. Be the parent who doesn't hide for their child and all that their child is. Be the parent who advocates for their child and teaches their child to advocate for themselves. Because that is what is going to lead to school success. When we know your child, when we can understand your child faster, supports go in more quickly, and your child thrives. Another great idea that most schools are willing to accommodate is a preview day. You're going to have to ask for it, but I am a firm believer that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Be the squeaky wheel. The purpose of a preview day, which will likely last 10 to 30 minutes, is to allow your child the opportunity to go to school, see where they will enter in the morning, how to get to their classrooms, to meet their teacher and begin to build that really, really critical relationship. To notice the layout of the room. Where do they sit? Where is their locker or their cubby? Are they only going to be sitting in desks? Do they sit at tables? Do they have a rug spot? Taking a lot of the guesswork out of the first day of school. This can also take some of the stress out of the first day of school, which will allow that prefrontal cortex to focus on other executive functions like remembering to raise your hand before you speak, or waiting for somebody else to stop talking before you start talking. If you have the ability to go with them, you can take pictures of them doing each step of what will be their new routine. And I do mean each step. Start at home. Have them bring that brand new backpack that you purchased in July. Have them put it on their back. Take a picture of them getting into the car. If they go by car, if they go by bus, probably aren't going to be able to, swing a bus, but that's okay. Take a picture of them getting out of the car, walking into the building, going wherever it is that they go in the building, all the way up to the room, putting their belongings in whatever it is, whether it's the locker or the cubby, sitting down at their seat. Then what you do with that is on the way home from school, you stop by CVS or Walgreens and you print out all those pictures. And then on a piece of oak tag or on grab, whatever box you have, flatten it out. And now you've got a solid piece of construction. Tape those on and come up with your child, right? This is a joint activity, a really, really short sentence that describes what's happening. And then look at it and see, okay, which of these have really specific timestamps? Leaving the house definitely has a specific timestamp. The time by which you need to be sitting in your desk definitely has a specific timestamp. Create a little clock right underneath the picture, underneath the little sentence that describes the picture, that's drawn to the time that you need to be doing those activities. Not every single one is going to have a clock. The key ones need to have a clock. What this does is it helps to teach future thinking in a way that is relevant and meaningful to your child, in a way that your child can access the information that is so critical to their success. The more they can future think, the more they are able to understand the relationship with time, routinize the actual steps that are needed to be where they need to be, and to feel success. While you're at school, you can also ask the teacher or somebody in the front office for a copy of the schedule. Since organization and future thinking about what comes next might be challenging for your child, having access to the schedule ahead of time can really help to do some preview work and practice before the first day of school. Another thing I want you to talk to their teacher about, or have them talk to their teacher about, ideally while you're there or you're having this big team meeting, or by email if necessary, is movement. This is something to bring up not just with the classroom teacher, but also with the support staff. For so many children with ADHD, movement has a tremendous impact on their ability to self-regulate and their ability to access their inner pharmacy, right? If you're clear about what types of movement, maybe for your child, it's heavy push and pull. For somebody else's child, it might be speed movements. For somebody else's child, it might be a small rhythmic movement, like rubbing something in their pocket or bouncing their feet on an elastic band on their chair. If you're clear about what helps to keep them regulated or to re-regulate them when they become dysregulated, you're helping to set your child up for success. Work with the team on the schedule we just discussed to ensure that it's an essential part of the day at meaningful intervals. And remember that you are the experts, you and your child. Unless your child will have the same teacher that they had the year before, you have a knowledge base that doesn't yet exist for their next year teacher. You know what has worked in the past, and you also know what has been a total bust. Do not wait to share this information. Teachers don't want to try and fail and try again if there are already systems, plans, or specific language that works really well. And the last thing I want to say about communication with school, I don't want you to assume. Teachers are amazing. They truly, truly are. They work incredibly hard. They put a tremendous amount of effort into getting to know their students and doing what is best for each one of them. That being said, it doesn't mean that every teacher has had extensive training on supporting children with ADHD. So what does that mean? Again, it means if you have tips and tricks that work for your child, share them. Share them before the school year starts and encourage the teacher to ask questions. Think of it as a homeschool partnership that works best with open lines of communication. Also, encourage this information to be shared with all of your child's teachers. The art teacher, the librarian, the technology teacher, they need to know what works best for your child just as much as the teacher who's responsible for teaching math and science. Consistency and predictability throughout the day will help your child thrive. So now we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I want to put it out to all of you. And I don't know, Ellen, I don't know if I can see if somebody volunteers, or maybe they can just, do they have the power to unmute? You're muted.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
So, well, we can't really see faces now. You want to have a volunteer.
Need a face if no one wants to show their face. I'm okay with that. I just want to know if they have access to unmute their own mics.
Andrea, can you try unmuting your mic and see what happens?
Yep, when you press unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, but Andrea's a co-host, so I don't.
We'll try it. If we have an issue, we'll
Yes,
problem solve then.
unmute. People are coming off.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay. So, hello everybody out there. I would love a volunteer, someone who wants to talk through something that they need help with. Their child is struggling in this way, or you have this goal for your child, or you think you have this goal, you want to have this goal, and you're not really sure how to achieve it, or you've tried 100 different ways to work through a situation and it hasn't worked yet. I am really flexible. Anything where you've struggled with school and you want to be open and get some feedback on what might work in terms of steps to take now, in August, in September, to make for a more successful transition to school. So if you're open to sharing a little bit about your child and your goal or concerns, we can talk through the most meaningful approach to setting your child up for success. Everybody's still muted.
Any takers? I thought we unmuted people.
I think they unmuted to show that it worked, but now they have to be really brave.
If somebody could come into the chat and say something. If you're interested in volunteering for this really exceptional opportunity, could you write in the chat? I'm game. I'm available. Or if you don't feel like speaking, you could write your issue in the chat.
Absolutely.
And then Melanie can respond to that.
And Ellen, I can't see the chat while I'm sharing my screen, so I'm going to give you all like 30 seconds to see if somebody wants to pop into the chat. And if not, I will take you through a case study. Amazing. Okay.
Can you see that?
I can. It popped up.
Oh, good.
Stacey,
okay.
Thank you so much. Stacey, are you willing to unmute so that we can actually speak? Would that be okay?
Do I have to unmute her?
Can you hear me?
Stacey, yes. Thank you. Amazing. Hi.
Hi, sorry, I have my child with me, so
No apologies. Parenting is real.
yes, yes. So in fact, he's doing some practice work, and my issue is I have a very hard time with him focusing, completing the work. He gets very upset, doesn't want to do it.
Mhm.
And so homework time at home is just it's a struggle.
Okay. So it sounds like maybe there's some homework or summer work that needs to get done. And so you're struggling with it now as well as you've struggled with it in the past. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Which is how I've came to realize um, that there may be an issue, or ADHD issue. And that's why, I did talk to his doctor about it, because I noticed that when it came time to do just homework, he would get very easily distracted, or after a while, it was hard to even get him to sit down and want to do it. If it wasn't like fun or like a game,
Mhm.
and it was just work, it was very, very hard to get him to do it. So, and
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a bit of
So-
a challenge in the classroom too.
Yeah. So one thing that you may have already done, but I want to just put out there is that when you have that meeting request for his team at school, that we talk to them about making sure that the amount of work is appropriate. And what I mean by that is sometimes teachers will give a worksheet with 30 questions that all effectively test out for the exact same skill. And if doing 5 would prove that he has mastered the skill and would also avoid the argument or the fight or the inability to continue to sit because the time sitting may be too much, then that's something that you want to talk with them about. You also really want to have a conversation. How old is your son?
He's 6 years old. It's going to be 7.
Right. Totally old enough. You want to have a conversation with him and really get a sense of what is it to his understanding that makes doing the work hard. Because sometimes it's something small that we can change that will make things much easier. Like maybe if he can stand up, or maybe if he can do a physical activity for a 5-minute timer before he sits down to do the work, or comes to the table and stands to do the work, or lays down to do the work, right? One of the things we want to do is work with our child to really look at the different ways that we can be flexible within meeting the expectation. If the expectation here is that he gets the work done, then we don't necessarily need to focus overly on, well, is he sitting? Are his feet still? Is he quiet? All of these other things that don't actually necessarily impact whether the work is getting done. So that's something that you can go back with him on and really talk through. What does he see as getting in the way? And then we try something and we figure out, okay, this is working. And then the question is, because it works at home, does that mean that it's going to work at school? Is there a version of standing up at his desk that the teachers are amenable to, right? Is there flexible seating in the classroom? Is there an option to use a slant board and stand at a bookshelf if there isn't a desk that would be the right height for standing? These are all, we have to think a little bit outside of the box. And the more flexible we are at that, the more likely we are to find a solution that really helps our child. We can also start small and build out. So start with doing work for 2 minutes at a time. And once we've gotten really successful at doing work for 2 minutes at a time, build out to 3 minutes at a time. Once we've gotten successful at 3 minutes at a time, build out to 4 or 5 minutes. We also want to remember, right? He's 6. He shouldn't be sitting for more than 15, 20 at the absolute max minutes at a time. And so we want to be sure that his body is getting that break from sitting and is moving, because his brain needs that shift in order to do its best work.
Can I ask very quickly, what are your thoughts on incentives as he's doing that work? And sometimes I wonder if I'm doing a bad thing, but I've had to, it almost feels like bribery, okay, do this and you get some ice cream, or we get that, that little Lego toy that,
Right.
like it's, yeah.
I do. I totally know. I am not one for incentives. Generally speaking, there are caveats to that statement, but in my practice and in my school, we typically don't incentivize in that way. Now, that's not to say, right, what we want to do is we don't necessarily want to make it material-based incentives. If we can make it so that eventually the incentive is intrinsically motivated, that's the goal, right? We don't want to overemphasize extrinsic motivation, because then they don't learn to really rely on themselves to accomplish a goal. However, and I use this because it's true, most of us get paid for the work that we do, right? A lot of the work that we do is associated with a paycheck. And that is the adult version of extrinsic motivation. So that's why I say it's not necessarily all or nothing. Where it becomes a problem is because he can then become reliant on it, even when he doesn't actually need it. It can become expensive for you. And it can also become that he is looking to be incentivized for things that he is already capable of doing. So if you're going to use incentives, my rule of thumb is if it is developmentally appropriate and he is capable of doing it on his own already, and it is an I don't want to as opposed to I cannot yet do it, don't incentivize. If he can't do it yet, don't incentivize, because you are setting him up for failure. You are saying, hey, let's go get ice cream as soon as you do X, Y, and Z. But if he can't do X, Y, and Z, you have now added shame to the situation, because now he failed at the activity and he doesn't get the reward. And so that's not fair, right? It truly goes back to what Dr. Ross Green says, kids do well if they can. And so what we have to do is figure out what they need to help them do well, as opposed to incentivizing because then they can. And the reality is that under perfect circumstances, sometimes our kids can meet an expectation and that incentive gets them there. But if the circumstances aren't perfect, they haven't slept, they are stressed, they didn't eat well or eat at all, they genuinely may not be able to meet that expectation. So I am personally weary of incentives. I really like the collaboration approach better, where we try something together, we come up with it, we see how it works. If it works, we keep doing it. And if it doesn't work, we go back to the drawing board. Thank you so much, Stacy. I
Thank you.
really appreciate you stepping in.
Thank you.
We have more questions. I also recognize we are getting tight on time. Team, is it okay if I answer another question or two?
Sure.
Okay.
We,
And
we,
obviously, if
we need
anybody
until,
wants to jump off.
we have until 9:15.
Oh, amazing. Okay, right.
So just so you
Great.
know, yeah.
Okay. I'm willing to volunteer, but my child has autism as well. Well, we welcome all forms of neurodivergence, right? Please tell me how you say your name. I want to make sure I pronounce it correctly.
Hold on. There we go. Irit.
Irit, thank you so much. If I can answer your question, I certainly will. I will tell you very openly that my work with autism is much more limited. And so if I can't answer for you, I won't, but I can try to help.
Well, I was trying to volunteer for the case study, but at this point, we have taken many of the steps that you've mentioned in your webinar, and our school is on summer break. But when August comes around, I'm one of those parents that do make the squeaky wheel, and we are supposed to have a meeting with the team and get them started. He is now, even though he's an honor roll student, he is doing summer school in the school that he will be going to. So just to get him acquainted with the environment and with, especially since it's going to be a new everything. He's starting middle school.
Great. I love that you have him there over the summer when there are less children, less craziness of every day, and an ability to get comfortable ahead of time. That's amazing.
Yes. And I appreciate the tip on getting like the success and the struggles as well. That's something I think we're going to implement. So thank you.
Absolutely. Do you have a question?
No, that's what I was saying. I was actually trying to
Okay.
volunteer before,
Okay.
but you
I
already
got
called
you.
me out, so I was like, thank you.
All right, absolutely. Karen, doing homework or choosing clothes in the morning and eating breakfast. Great. So let's go to choosing clothes in the morning. I wonder, Karen, have you ever moved choosing clothes to be part of the bedtime routine?
Yes, it does go much more smoothly when outfit options are picked out the night before, but she does have her whims and still the next day, none of those outfits work.
Okay, absolutely. I know that child. So one thing that you can do is continue to encourage the choosing the outfit the night before, right? As sort of part of the standard practice of the bedtime routine. And then I would keep what I call the perfect outfit waiting in the wings. And that might mean that you buy a second of whatever top and bottom or dress or onesie, whatever it is that we know without fail works, and have that not in the regular outfit selection, because there's a whole nother set of that exact same outfit available for general choosing, but as the backup of we're not going to let the outfit derail the entire morning. So let's have a backup in place and let her be part of that process of creating. The other thing that you can do is timestamp, right? So like I was talking about before, this idea of taking pictures of your child. You can take pictures of her in her closet, in her drawers, picking out and with a quick sentence underneath it. And you might create one of these for fall and a different one for winter, because what she's going to need might look a little bit different. And then you can sort of pull the fall one back out for the spring. But it shows pulling out a shirt, pulling out a bottom that's weather appropriate. And there's a timestamp underneath it, right? So as she masters sort of understanding and being aware of time, having that clock underneath the picture with the sentence can really help her access this idea of, okay, this is my job right now, and it has to happen because in a minute, I have a new job to do.
So with the stamp type, I can be like, oh, well, you only have this amount of time to make this choice.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And we don't want to create time stress, right? We don't want to create undue stress, but sometimes having that stamp and being able to see it in front of us is really helpful. And in terms of eating breakfast, it is truly more of the same. So it's creating the process and visually creating it with her as a part of it, and having a conversation with her, engaging her in the conversation. Where does the difficulty come in eating breakfast? Is it that the TV is on and the TV is distracting? Is it that she wants gourmet breakfast and we have 5 minutes for breakfast and nobody has time to sit down and, create a 3-course meal? Is it that she isn't hungry yet? Maybe she's not hungry, but she has to take her meds and she has to have food in her belly when she takes her meds, right? We need to really partner with her to understand what is the biggest problem getting in her way.
Oh gosh, I think all 3 of those are kind of the case.
So if all 3 of those are the case, you want to pick the one that she thinks is getting in the way most and address that first. And if it's helping, but it's not solving the problem, then we can go back and see what else might need to happen. We don't want to do like crazy changes all at the same time, because they're less likely to be sustainable. If we make a small change and we write it down and we hold ourselves accountable to it, then it's easier to make the change. And so the growth might be incremental. The ease of breakfast may take 2 weeks to accomplish, but it's more likely that 2 weeks later, you're still going to be experiencing that success and having a less stressful breakfast eating environment.
So it's worthwhile to like try doing that over the summer. I mean, she has summer school and then.
Yes, it is so worthwhile. Figure out what works now, because can you imagine, just imagine with me for a second, okay? Imagine that it's September and you've figured out getting dressed and eating breakfast, and your mornings are tenfold smoother, and you are sending your daughter off to school and she is calm and relaxed And she arrives at school with her brain, with that prefrontal cortex, ready to tackle whatever subject she has first period, without it being clouded by being rushed, not having had a proper goodbye because she was stressed, all of those things, right? That would be amazing, wouldn't it, Karen?
Very amazing.
That's the work that we do during the summer. Now is the time when the stress is lower. This is when the real change can happen. So please try it. I would love to hear, truly.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to read from Dina, I believe. I can't verbally speak here, that's okay. But my daughter, who has ADHD and has a 504, has faced a lot of pushback when we have tried to give tips to teachers and administration. Wondering if you have any guidance on how to work better in partnership with teachers and admin who may not have specific training working with neurodiverse kids, even though they think they know what's best. Yes, thank you. That is so real. I'm sorry you're experiencing that. I would love to sit here and say, oh, you're the only one, but that would be a total lie. The first thing that I would say is new year, new teacher. Let's go into this year's teacher with an open mind and see if we can partner with them, see if they are open. You never know who's going to be open. Sometimes it's the old teacher who just loves learning new tricks. Sometimes it's that brand new teacher who honestly recognizes that they just don't know everything yet. And sometimes it takes a little while, but sometimes they get there. But what I would say is, hey, I just learned about this new resource for teachers through CHAD, right? Throw out this Bergen County CHAD group that's going to be happening starting in October. Send the flyer in with your child. Put it out there in ways that doesn't feel intimidating. You could even say, right, if it's November, if you wait until November, make something up. Oh my gosh, my sister is a teacher and she went to this thing and she came home and she was raving about it. And since she's a teacher and she loved it, I just wanted to share this new resource with you because all she ever says to me is, oh my gosh, every teacher needs to do this, right? Make it up. Who cares? They're not going to know. So that's one way. Another thing to do is if you work with any outside providers, whether it is a therapist, a parent coach, a psychiatrist for medication, a developmental pediatrician, I don't care who, somebody who works for CHAD who might be willing to get on the phone. If you sign a release of information and give that professional permission to call the school kind of has to take that call. They have to set up a meeting, whether it's by phone or Zoom or, possibly in person, but more likely phone or Zoom, where this outside professional who is advocating on your behalf steps in and provides that guidance. That is so powerful because now it's not coming from the parent. Now they aren't any longer allowed to see it as complaining or whining or parent knows what's best when really you do, right? This is your child. You know them inside and out. You work with them every single day. So if the school isn't willing to listen to you, think about the other resources that you have in your court that you can use to connect with the school on your behalf. You just have to sign a release form that basically just says, I give you permission to contact the school on behalf of me and my child. I hope that that's helpful. What are you advise doing with children that struggle in communicating their thoughts, strengths, and challenges? Great question. I suggest modeling. Model it all day, every day. Talk about what's working for you. Talk about where you're struggling. Go around the table while you're driving in the car, whatever it may be, and encourage everybody to try saying something that is a strength or a challenge or a positive moment in their day and a struggle in their day. Just keep going with it over and over again. And as the adult, model lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different answers. And then what's going to happen is your child's going to pick one answer and they're going to give you the same answer every day. And that is a great start. And when you think they're ready, put in a new rule to the challenge. The new rule to the challenge is you may not say the same thing that you said yesterday. Then they have to practice giving two different things. So that's how I would approach encouraging them to express. The other thing and you heard me say it before, read to them. I'm not sure how old your child is. Piggy and Elephant books, if it is developmentally appropriate age-wise, almost every kid loves them. There is so much emotion and socialization in those books. My kids go crazy with me because I will stop 30 times a book and ask them questions. How do you think Piggy's feeling here? Why do you think Gerald said that today, right? You don't even have to buy books necessarily that are talking about something really specific, like emotions. Those are great too. They're wonderful, some of them. But if you slow down and you pay attention to the stories that you're reading to your children or with your children, or that your children are reading to themselves, there is so much really, really good stuff in there for you to pull out, to encourage them to think about how others are feeling. And the reality is, it is always easier for children to recognize it externally. So to name it in a character in a book or in a TV show, name it in a TV show too, before they can name it as their own. And if they tend to start pulling out similar thoughts and threads, you can begin to make that connection that this may be what they're focusing on because it directly relates to how they're feeling, even if they're not ready to say it yet. So model and read and ask questions. Absolutely the two best things that you can do. All right, I'm going to try and take one last question really, really fast. How does the idea of PICS timestamping work with teens, even ones who can drive themselves to school? She is often late and experiences blips of lost time during her school day morning routine. Absolutely. Totally. Great question, Debbie. It can work the exact same way. So if she drives herself to school, do a practice run in August or July, even better, and take those pictures with her. Help her understand, right? Talk to her about her. Educate her on these time blips and how they make her feel and how she would feel if they didn't happen as much. If she can make that correlation and understand that this would help her feel better, it would help set her up for success in ways that she appreciates, then doing that timestamping can really work. And what you want to do is you want to help her to be responsible for leaving it out in a space that is visible for her. And if that means that she needs one upstairs and she needs one downstairs, make two. Pictures are 4 cents to print. So it's not cost prohibitive. And it really, really can help. So the truth is, it's basically the exact same thing, except that you have to take her on one go of it, and then she can do it on her own. These were incredible questions. I am so, so appreciative of everything that you all asked. Please, I am here. Please feel free to get in touch. My email is melanie@levelupnj.com. Level Up Counseling and Consulting is where you can find me. My phone number's there if you prefer phone. Please take a look at the book. It is a great thing to share with your school. I do author reads. It's a great way for me to come in and communicate with an entire cohort of children and adults to help them understand, to really get that neurodivergent conversation going, to encourage people to think differently, speak differently, just to know and to be. So I have loved being here. Your questions were truly amazing. Just showing up here tells me everything I need to know about the parenting that you're doing and the effort that you're putting in. Collaborate with your children, work with them, and please reach out to me, reach out to the amazing team at Bergen County CHAD. We are here to help.
Oh my goodness, Melanie. Yes. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank
Wow,
you.
it's so chock full of ideas and thoughts and information and suggestions and different ways of thinking about things. Whew. I'm going to listen to that again. And I hope all of you can come again. Listen to Melanie's talk again if you like on bergencountychad.com. Come to our meetings, join us, and have a great summer. Really enjoy. Thanks again so much.